When we examine the Middle East, the horrific carnage currently underway, one ultimately has to pick a side. Concerning Israel, the Bible is not silent as to who will be the ultimate victor. In this video, we examine a somewhat hidden prophecy, which has striking parallels between the current war between Israel and its proxy enemies that surround them.
The psalm we are particularly focused on is Psalm 83, which is often associated with the oracle against Damascus. Around 3,000 years ago, Asaph wrote prophetic words that have never been fulfilled. Asaph was a Levite who was appointed by King David as the chief leader over worship and the entire group of musicians. The king took a particular interest in ensuring that this worship group met his desires as to how the Lord should be worshipped. He issued them with a complete list of guidelines and every day met with them. There were many ministers and teachers involved within this worship group while they established the ground rules of worship. In fact, worship was so important that the Ark of the Covenant would often be brought before the worship team. We're also able to gather that Asaph was actually involved in the prophetic ministry from David's own words, as well as being a seer, which is another name for a prophet.
O God, do not remain silent. Do not turn a deaf ear. Do not stand aloof, O God. See how your enemies growl, how your foes rear their heads. With cunning they conspire against your people. They plot against those you cherish. Come, they say, let us destroy them as a nation, so that Israel's name is remembered no more.
Two things stand out in these scriptures. Firstly, Asaph opened his prophetic song, beckoning God to not remain silent, to not turn a deaf ear, or stand aloof. It is openly apparent that he was speaking of a time where the wonders and power of God are absent from the land of Israel. Secondly, Asaph's tension is notable, as the enemies of both God and his fellow Jews were now openly showing their aggression with their growl and the rearing of their heads. They were scheming, plotting, and conspiring to bring about the downfall of the entire nation of Israel. Their aim was not only to conquer Israel, but to completely destroy them as a nation, with the goal of their name being remembered no more.
With one mind they plot together. They form an alliance against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, of Moab and the Hagrites, Bablos, Ammon and Amalek, Philistia with the people of Tyre. Even Assyria has joined them to reinforce Lot's descendants.
This is often referred to as the Alliance of Ten, where various people referred to as the Tens of joined together to plot Israel's demise. It is a mix of people from ancient nations and cities who come together to cause Israel's desolation, and it's not the nations themselves. The first mention in the alliance are those from the tents of Edom. These were known as the Edomites and were direct descendants of Jacob's brother, Esau. In the days of Asaph, it was located in today's southwestern lands of Jordan. The second grouping are the Ishmaelites. Ishmael was the son of Abram, born through Hagar, while Abram's faith in God regarding the promised son in Isaac wavered. According to the account in Genesis, Abram, at his wife's insistence, sent both Hagar and Ishmael packing, where they were eventually rescued by an angel in the desert. Today the Quran regards Ishmael as a prophet and believe he eventually became the father of the 12 tribes of Ishmael, who were also called princes and were diametrically opposed to the 12 tribes of Israel. They eventually settled in the areas of Western Arabia, which today is associated to groups within Saudi Arabia. It is interesting that in terms of Islamic belief, Ishmael was buried in Mecca, which today is the #1 holiest site for all Muslims, situated in Saudi Arabia. Now Closely related to the Ishmaelites, Asaph mentions the Moabites and the Hagrites. The Moabites have their origin in modern-day Jordan, east of the Dead Sea. The Hagrites are a bit more tricky to identify, as Ishmael's mother had remarried and had many other children. They do appear to be east of Israel, as an account in Chronicles described a great battle in which 3 of the tribes of Israel decimated the Hagrite men, taking plunder back to their land. While debated, there are also likely people in modern-day Jordan. The 5th group which conspires against Israel are people referred to as from the city of Byblos. This is one of the oldest cities in the world, located in Lebanon, almost 30 kilometers or 20 miles north of Lebanon's modern-day capital, Beirut. Today the actual city is known as Jubail or Jebail, which is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Interestingly, the 6th party in this evil alliance are the people of Ammon, which lived between the valleys of Arnon and Jabbok, and today is also now part of modern-day Jordan. Now, Amalek was a nomadic tribe which existed in the south of Israel. Today it is believed to be the same area as the arid Negev desert, and always were bloodthirsty against the Israelites. The next name mentioned in their alliance is Philistia. Although the 5 key cities are mentioned in ancient Israel, today the Philistines are Arabs that both live with the Israelites, those in Gaza and the West Bank. The 9th group listed is ancient Tyre, which today is one of the oldest cities in modern-day Lebanon. Finally, the 10th group of people mentioned is from the Confederacy of Assyria, which was a large area incorporating Syria, southeastern Turkey, and parts of northern Iraq. In summary, these people that formed the alliance are from the modern-day nations of Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Syria, the southernmost part of Turkey, and arguably the northern parts of Iraq. Interestingly, all these people who conspire against Israel are from today's Islamic nations, with the direct majority being the neighbors of Israel and are in constant hostility towards them. Historically, while all the nations themselves have at many times been at war with Israel, they have never all turned on Israel at the exact same time. From the scripture backdrop, it is not from all of Arabian descent, but clans which unify against Israel. Now, some claim that this prophecy was fulfilled in King Jehoshaphat's time, but the evidence of this combined force being destroyed and the manner in which it is described just does not remotely meet its fulfillment. It is for this reason that many scholars are now awakening to this prophecy tucked away in the Psalms. So what are the motives and outcome of this alliance?
Do to them as you did to Midian, as you did to Sisera and Jabin at the river Kishon, who perished at Endor and became like dung on the ground. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, "Let us take possession of the pasture lands of God."
So Asaph interestingly asked God to destroy them in the exact same manner that the enemies brought their destruction. The destruction of Midian, Sisera, and Jabin are all examples which resulted in their attackers being compared to dung on the ground. Both these examples show the swiftness of both their violent deaths, the intensity of Israel's defense, as well as their deserving fate. So Jabin, who was king of Canaan at that time, as well as Sisera, who was his commanding officer and chief, ruthlessly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. Deborah, a judge and a prophet of that time, ordered Barak, to attack the forces of King Jabin. In the very first attack, every single man was killed, where Sisera managed to escape on foot. He ran away to one of his allies, where a woman named Jael met him, assured him of his safety, and when he fell asleep, she took a large tent peg and drove it through his head so hard it lodged in the concrete. The enemy was so decimated that Israel plundered everything that the former king of Canaan had gathered. Nothing remained of the enemy. In his praise, Asaph reminds the Lord of the ruthless destruction of the Midianites. Two of their kings, Oreb and Zeb, had threatened to occupy the lands of Israel. This time it was Gideon who decimated the aggressive forces and seized eventually both kings, decapitating them. Now, what these aggressors had in common is that they had the exact same idea. Let us take possession of the pasture lands of God. The second thing they had in common is that they were totally decimated, and there was extreme violence on both sides. Let us consider what the scripture prophesied concerning the fall of this alliance.
Make them like tumbleweed, my God, like chaff before the wind. As fire consumes the forest or a flame sets the mountain ablaze, so pursue them with your tempest and terrify them with your storm. Cover their faces with shame, Lord, so that they will seek your name.
There are three phrases that are key in understanding their relationship to other potential prophecies. He asked God to make them like tumbleweed, like chaff before the wind. He likens their judgment as being swift, as fire consuming the forest or a flame that sets the mountain ablaze. Finally, just as the attacking armies were completely plundered by the examples he had just given, Asaph prophesies that the Lord will pursue them and terrify them with your storm. The end result of this prophecy is that this alliance of 10 is completely decimated, and Israel emerges as victorious in an exceptionally bloody and violent war.
May they ever be ashamed and dismayed. May they perish in disgrace. Let them know that you, whose name is the Lord, that you alone are the Most High over all the earth.
The purpose of this prophecy is not just the complete destruction of Israel's closest enemies, but so they will be ashamed, dismayed, disgraced, and the few survivors will seek God's name. It is only with their complete and comprehensive destruction will they actually realize that the Lord is the Most High over all the earth. It is also with these words that Asaph ends the psalm. Remarkably, it is a very similar alliance uttered by the Damascus destruction in the book of Isaiah that feature in this prophecy. In Isaiah's prophecy, in Isaiah 17, the emphasis is on the destruction of the Syrian capital, Damascus, and the utter destruction of the area in West Jordan, together with the West Bank in an uprising that is quelled overnight. While similar modern-day countries are identified between these two prophecies, this is not what makes many believe they are related. Rather, in both prophecies, their goal is to annihilate Israel, loot and plunder them, and decimate any survivors so that the Jewish race will cease to exist. They also use the exact same phrase, nearly word for word, not mentioned in any other prophecy. And they are, make them like tumbleweed, like chaff before the wind. Finally, in both cases, the enemy alliance will cover their faces with shame and will seek the Lord. As we know, Israel as a nation today has a multiple number of enemies in the region, both local and foreign. Besides from the common threats from Iran and Turkey, they are surrounded locally with aggressive Islamic hordes on their doorstep, making any chance for peace in the future extremely remote. The Arabs in the Gaza Strip, those referred to as Palestinians in the West Bank, the southeastern front of Lebanon, are constantly terrorizing Jewish citizens. Whether it is firing missiles into Israel's territory, uprisings around the Temple Mount, stabbing innocent Jewish people, or sending drones with weapons built to inflict massive damage to the Jewish people and their economy, this is a trend gaining momentum each year. It has resulted in many wars, but never a full onslaught against Israel at the same time, which is evident in the current level of violence in the Middle East. Could this violent war be a precursor to this bloodbath of Psalm 83? There are basically three ways in which this psalm is interpreted. The first is that this is just a song and not prophecy. The second is that it happened already at some point in time. And the third is a view that a growing many futurists believe is that it will occur in the years to come, culminating in end-time events. Let's break it down a bit further. The first view is based on the fact that it does not specifically state it is prophecy, nor contain specific prophetic words like in the last days, etc. Against this view is the fact the majority of prophecies in Psalms don't actually describe it as prophecy either, such as the many prophecies regarding the coming of Jesus. The other event that counters such a view is that it refers to Asaph as a prophet, as well as mentioning specific people and cities. Then there are those who declare that it happened in King Jehoshaphat's time, or at the conclusion of World War II. As reiterated throughout, there's never been such a destruction, nor have these clans turned to the Lord, which itself speaks against an historical account. Lastly, the third view is that this will be accomplished either before or after the rapture. Many futurists believe that this war is a precursor to the war of Gog and Magog, as this prophecy states that Israel will feel secure and at peace before that major conflict occurs. Interestingly, the tribes, clans or peoples mentioned in Psalm 83 are not openly present in the prophesied war of Gog and Magog. Their absence strongly supports the view that they are eliminated and serve as a precursor to Gog and his alliance attempt to invade Israel from the far north. When examining one's position, one has to consider the current plight in the Middle East. It began with intense violence by Hamas, intent on wiping Israel off the face of the earth. The enemies of Israel include specific Arabs from Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, northern Iraq, and Jordan all have a common purpose of annihilating Israel. The alliance of 10 is evident in current events in the Middle East. Now, many in Lebanon don't want war, but peace. But Hezbollah is intent on wiping out Israel, and it is why they have more than 150,000 high-powered rockets. Jordan itself is not aggressive, but since the 1967 war, many Palestinians originated from Jordan and were left alone after their failed attempt to annex Israel, becoming part of the Palestinian population. You'll also notice that in this prophecy it has intense focus on clans or tribes and cities, but only mentions Assyria as an ancient nation. Regardless of interpretations, Asaph prophesies that the lands of the alliance will be decimated, and the few that survive will know that the Lord is in control of Israel's destiny.
All that is left is time, and it will surely tell if events in the Middle East are going to go from bloodshed to intense destruction. Since this prophetic war, uttered around 3,000 years ago, mentions the complete destruction of Israel's immediate surrounding enemies, it remains a serious obstacle to peace. Israel needs to be at peace, as this is a biblical requirement for events larger than life. But that is a discussion for another day. Till next time, Maranatha.